we gather today to reflect upon an event that is at once heartbreaking and deeply instructive, a story that, despite its profoundly tragic nature, compels us to confront the hidden realities of domestic violence, the silent struggles within households, and the resilience of the human spirit when faced with unimaginable terror. The case in question unfolded in a small agricultural community in southern Brazil, a place known for its crops, its close-knit relationships, and its traditions that bring neighbors together in celebration. In such a setting, violent crimes are rare, which made the events of April 21st, 2025, all the more shocking. What began as a quiet holiday turned into a nightmare that shattered not only a single household, but also the peace of an entire community. A woman, her teenage daughter, and her youngest child were together in their apartment on a day that should have been uneventful. Within hours, the woman and her adolescent daughter would lose their lives. The youngest child would endure a trauma that no one her age should ever experience, and the town itself would be left in mourning, struggling to comprehend how such violence could erupt in a family that seemed, from the outside, so ordinary and even loving. This tragedy forces us to examine multiple dimensions of human behavior: the mask of harmony that can conceal turmoil, the corrosive effects of jealousy and control, the bravery that emerges under extreme duress, and the social responsibility we all share in addressing domestic conflict before it escalates into irreversible loss. It is a reminder that appearances can deceive, that danger often lurks in private spaces, and that intervention and awareness are critical in protecting the most vulnerable among us. The family at the center of this tragedy was composed of a mother, 3 daughters of different ages, and a stepfather figure who had recently entered their lives. The mother was described by all who knew her as kind, nurturing, and committed to her work in the field of therapeutic massage. She was the anchor of her family, balancing professional responsibilities with the demands of raising 3 daughters. The eldest was already an adult, living in another city. The second, a vibrant 14-year-old who enjoyed participating in community events. And the youngest, a curious 9-year-old who shared in her sister's enthusiasm and was deeply attached to her mother. The man who became part of this household was a landscaper, known for his work in maintaining green spaces and gardens in the town. Outwardly, he and the mother appeared to be a devoted couple. They had married in a civil ceremony only months before, and were planning a religious celebration to solidify their union. On social media, they shared affectionate photographs and public declarations of love, which suggested harmony and stability. To acquaintances and neighbors, they were an ordinary couple, enjoying a seemingly happy life together. Yet, beneath that outward image, tensions had begun to rise. Investigators later revealed that arguments had taken place in the days leading up to the incident, primarily fueled by jealousy and suspicion. While these disagreements were not visible to the public, they were serious enough that the woman confided in friends about reconsidering the planned wedding. There had even been precautions taken before their relationship deepened. She had consulted a lawyer to verify his past, demonstrating a degree of caution, but finding nothing alarming, she chose to trust him. Trust, however, can sometimes mask vulnerability, and when trust is broken, the consequences can be severe. On that April afternoon, the household was gathered together in their apartment. What started as a conversation quickly escalated into an argument. When the woman expressed that the marriage ceremony planned for May would not take place, this decision, according to investigators, ignited uncontrollable rage in her partner. In that moment, jealousy and anger transformed into violence. He retrieved a knife from the kitchen and began an attack. The 14-year-old daughter, showing remarkable courage, attempted to defend her mother. In an act of bravery that would ultimately cost her life, she confronted the attacker, trying to shield the woman she loved most. Tragically, she suffered fatal wounds to her chest and abdomen. The mother herself was also stabbed and succumbed to her injuries within minutes. What occurred was not only a murder, but a double tragedy that extinguished 2 lives bound by love and family, leaving behind a child who had witnessed the unimaginable. The 9-year-old, caught in the midst of chaos, demonstrated an instinct for survival beyond her years. Frozen at first by fear, she managed to take hold of her phone and send desperate messages to her older sister, who was miles away in another city. Her words conveyed the horror unfolding before her eyes. Urged by her sibling to escape, she found the courage to act. Running to the balcony, she leaped from the first floor, landing 16 feet below, and sprinted into the street, screaming for help. Neighbors rushed to her aid, and soon the authorities were alerted. This act of survival not only preserved her life, but provided crucial testimony about what had transpired inside the apartment. By the time law enforcement entered the residence, the scene was one of devastation. The mother and daughter lay lifeless, their wounds evidence of the brutality inflicted upon them. The attacker himself was also found dead, not by the knife, but by a firearm. It appeared that after committing the murders, he had turned the weapon upon himself, ending his life. Investigators were left with the task of piecing together the sequence of events, tracing the origin of the firearm, and attempting to understand how a man with no known criminal record, no prior violence, and a public reputation for being caring and involved with his stepdaughters could suddenly erupt with such destructive force. The days that followed were marked by grief. The community, small and tightly bound, entered a period of mourning. Schools suspended classes, neighbors gathered to support the surviving children, and a funeral was held that brought together friends, family, clients, and classmates to honor the memories of the mother and daughter. Social media, once filled with messages of joy from the couple, became a place of mourning, where messages of shock and sorrow flowed freely. The attacker was buried separately in a restricted service, reflecting the anger and revulsion that many felt toward his actions. The 9-year-old survivor became the focus of collective care. With her elder sister stepping in as guardian, the child faced the daunting task of rebuilding her life while carrying the burden of trauma. Psychologists and social workers intervened to provide professional assistance, recognizing the long journey ahead for someone who had witnessed such violence. Communities organized donations. Schools and churches developed programs to help her reintegrate into daily life, and a network of emotional and financial support began to form. Her courage in escaping has been hailed as extraordinary, and while it does not erase the pain, it offers a glimmer of hope that she may, with time and care, find resilience and healing. This case raises profound questions that extend beyond the immediate circumstances. How can individuals who seem outwardly stable mask such violent potential? How can communities, friends, and family members identify and respond to warning signs before it is too late? What structures must be in place to protect vulnerable individuals from domestic violence that hides in plain sight? One of the most sobering aspects of this tragedy is the deceptive appearance of the relationship. On social media, everything looked harmonious. Publicly, there were no reports of conflict. The man was regarded as a good stepfather, someone who participated in community events with his stepdaughters. Yet, in private, jealousy and control were festering, unspoken tensions that eventually escalated into deadly violence. This is a stark reminder that domestic violence often exists behind closed doors, hidden from the view of even close friends and neighbors. Outward appearances are not reliable indicators of what transpires within the intimacy of a home. The role of jealousy in this case cannot be overlooked. Jealousy, when coupled with insecurity and possessiveness, becomes a toxic force that corrodes relationships. It breeds suspicion, anger, and a need for control, which can escalate into violence when left unchecked. The woman's reconsideration of the wedding ceremony, an act of autonomy and self-determination, was interpreted as a threat by her partner, whose response was not negotiation or acceptance, but violence. This illustrates how power dynamics in relationships can become dangerous when one partner views the other as possession rather than as an equal. We must also reflect upon the extraordinary bravery of children in crisis. The teenage daughter who attempted to shield her mother demonstrated a courage that is almost incomprehensible given her age. Her actions reflect the powerful instinct to protect loved ones, even at the cost of one's life. Her sacrifice is a painful reminder of the dangers that children face when violence enters the home. The youngest child, in turn, exhibited a survival instinct that is remarkable. Her decision to leap from the balcony and run for help represents not only courage, but the capacity of the human spirit to choose life even in moments of overwhelming terror. The community response to this tragedy also deserves attention. While the events cannot be undone, the collective mourning, the support for the surviving sisters, and the mobilization of resources illustrate the power of social solidarity. In small towns where everyone knows each other, a single act of violence reverberates across the entire community. Funerals, public rituals of mourning, and symbolic gestures, such as the suspension of classes and the display of mourning ribbons, allow communities to grieve together and to reaffirm their bonds. These collective acts of remembrance and support are essential in helping survivors and bystanders process trauma. From a broader perspective, this case underscores the urgent need for comprehensive strategies to address domestic violence. Legal systems must ensure that protective measures are accessible and effective. Psychological services must be available not only after tragedies occur, but also proactively when signs of conflict begin to surface. Communities must foster cultures in which concerns about jealousy, control, or manipulation within relationships can be voiced without fear of stigma. Education about healthy relationships, conflict resolution, and emotional regulation must be prioritized, particularly for young people who are forming their first partnerships. The responsibility is shared across society. Governments, schools, healthcare providers, religious institutions, and community organizations all play a role in creating environments that prevent domestic violence. Laws must be enforced, but enforcement alone is insufficient. Early intervention, awareness campaigns, accessible counseling, and a willingness to take seriously the subtle signals of distress in a relationship are equally crucial. Psychologists emphasize that children exposed to violence face long-term risks, including post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, and difficulties in trust and relationships. However, they also highlight the concept of resilience. With appropriate support, children can adapt and recover, finding strength in survival. The youngest survivor of this tragedy has already demonstrated resilience through her actions. With the sustained care of her sister, the dedication of professionals, and the support of her community, she may find a path forward. Her story will remain marked by loss, but it may also stand as a testament to the capacity of the human spirit to endure. As we contemplate this tragedy, it becomes evident that it is more than a singular event. It is a microcosm of a wider phenomenon that affects families across the globe. Domestic violence is not confined to any one culture, nation, or socioeconomic group. It is a universal challenge, one that often hides behind smiles, celebrations, and the illusion of harmony. It destroys lives in silence, until, in moments like this, it erupts into public consciousness with devastating consequences. Therefore, this case should not be regarded merely as a story of loss, but as a call to action. It is an urgent reminder that prevention must begin long before knives are drawn or guns are fired. Prevention begins with recognizing the signs of unhealthy relationships, with empowering individuals to make autonomous choices without fear of retaliation, with creating systems of accountability that deter violence, and with cultivating communities where support is available before tragedy strikes. In conclusion, while we mourn the loss of lives that should never have been taken, we must also honor the bravery of those who resisted, the courage of the child who survived, and the solidarity of the community that responded. Their actions provide lessons in resilience, compassion, and the enduring strength of the human will to live. Let us commit ourselves to learning from this tragedy, to supporting survivors everywhere, and to building societies where the sanctity of life and the safety of the home are never again so brutally violated.